The Quest 2. To say that this headset changed VR will be an understatement. It completely changed the VR scene the moment this thing launched in 2020. And it was a lot of people's first VR headset they owned, including me. But after 3 years of almost daily usage, faults begin to show. So in this video, I will be going over how the Quest 2 is like in 2024 and how it compares to the offerings we have today. I will mention lenses, displays, and IPD, the game library, sound, battery life, comfort, and lastly, controllers. I will also mention some things that changed between when I got the headset on launch versus the headset right now. I remember getting the Quest 2 3 years ago. I was so hyped to finally jump into VR because I've tried the Rift S a few months before the Quest 2 launched. And it was so amazing to play VR after watching countless videos about it. I still remember when Half-Life Alyx came out. That was the moment I knew, bro, I need to get VR. About half a year later and I got the Quest 2. And I've been using this thing almost daily. I love VR and this headset so much. And it's still amazing how this thing survived as almost 3 years of torture from me. But let's finally talk about the headset, shall we? Let's start at the lenses. The lenses, display and IPD are one of the most important things of a VR headset. Get one of those things wrong and your immersion will suffer because of this. But I'm happy to tell you that the Quest 2 stood the test of time with the lenses and displays. The IPD is, well, we'll talk about it later. The lenses of the Quest 2 are still one of the most clear lenses VR has to offer, even 3 years later. They don't have a lot of glare on them, so like when white text on a black background gives a little glow effect, yeah, that's glare. The display has a resolution of 1832 by 9020 per eye. Yes, I said display because the Quest 2 only uses one display for both lenses, but it is still a great display. It completely eliminates the so-called screen door effect. I completely forgot how good the lenses of this thing are because this is the headset I use most of the time. But then I tried the Rift S again, and the difference of these two displays is bigger than my cock. It felt so weird to use another headset which has worse displays than the Quest 2. The Rift S displays aren't bad, it's just that I'm so spoiled by the Quest 2 display that I can't go back. But the Rift S came out before the Quest 2 did. How about something that came after the Quest 2? The only headset I've used after the Quest 2 came out was the Quest 3. And I can proudly say that the Quest 2 still looks pretty good, even compared to a headset that just released a few months ago. Of course, the Quest 3 looks better, but it's not a big difference compared to the difference between the Quest 2 and Rift S. I have only used a Quest 3 a little bit since I don't own a Quest 3 yet, but I will still be comparing it to the Quest 2. Something that didn't hold up though was the IPG adjustment. I don't know who thought that this was a good idea, but for some reason, instead of using a normal IPD slider like with every other headset or IPD adjusting through the software like the Rift S did, they use this really weird 3-place IPD adjustment thing. IPD is like the distance your eyes have from each other, and if you don't set this correctly in your VR headset, you will get headaches, eye strain, and all that kind of stuff. Well, I'm sorry to break it to you, but if your IPD isn't exactly 58, 63, or 68, you will probably encounter issues with your eyes or head or maybe some more things. But for some reason, Meta decided it was a good idea to cheap out on one of the most important parts of a VR headset. Like, I get why they cheaped out on the comfort because you can buy third-party head straps, but this is insane. My IPD is 61.8 and I get headaches after using this headset for only half an hour. Luckily, Meta learned from their mistakes and eventually made a normal IPD adjustment slider for the Quest 3. But that still isn't an excuse for this dumbass system. Now moving on to the game library, there isn't really much to say here, except that it has grown a bit since 2020. A lot of VR games have come to Quest in its lifetime, but not every VR game, which I understand because the Quest 2 runs on mobile hardware. But don't freak out if your favorite VR game isn't on the Quest, because you can still play PC VR games using a link cable, or AirLink or virtual desktop, I don't really care. I just play most of my VR games on PC VR because it has a bigger library, and if you have a somewhat decent PC or laptop, it also has way better performance. VR chat on standalone is an absolute nightmare, bro. You mostly get like 30 FPS if you're lucky. If you play in a pretty full lobby, you can expect your FPS to drop to something like 15. But on PC VR, it's just normal. normal, at least that's if you have a good PC. Now moving on to sound. I'm gonna keep this short. The audio on the Quest 2 is not good. It uses these little speakers on the side of the headset, but you're way better off just using headphones with your Quest 2. It's better than a Rift S audio though, which has no bass and a little high-end detail, but the Quest 2 isn't that much better. It has a little bit of bass, a little bit of high-end detail, but that's it. It's not good. At least it's better than a phone speaker or something. The Quest 3 speakers on the other hand are noticeably better. And I would actually use the Quest 3 without headphones because it really isn't that bad. It's actually good. Integrated VR audio that isn't like the Index things that are actually good, impossible. But for the Quest 2, I would recommend just using headphones. But the speakers are usable. For some reason, I completely forgot to talk about the microphone of the Quest 2 in the original recording. But the audio you are hearing right now is from that microphone. I think it sounds pretty decent. I mean, nobody's gonna complain about the mic. It isn't like an original Vive mic, which is no, just no. Or a Rift S mic, that's fine at first, but sometimes it just completely bugs out and it makes it impossible to communicate and even understand what is going on. You just sound like a robot.
I have a house.
I'm going to wreck this ship tonight. Are you about to get a donut? How are you expecting to do this? I am with a team. I am doing this solo. Not actually. I am trying to betray them later.
Now moving on to battery life. Because the Quest 2 isn't a wired PC VR headset, it uses battery. And that battery isn't great. It's not bad, but don't expect to play on this thing for like 4 hours or something. For me, the battery life lasts around 2 to 2.5 hours until it just shuts off. I always have this. My VR just shuts off on the worst possible timing. Like when you're about to friend a really nice person you met on VR chat or something. Oh yeah, there goes your VR. You can buy an Elite battery strip or Bobo VR to fix this problem though. You can get a lot more playtime if you have something like that. But the playtime you get is still not infinite because it still uses a battery and PC VR headsets don't. That leads me to comfort. The comfort of this headset is also a really good reason to upgrade your headset, because the stock Quest 2 head strap just straight up sucks. It's this little elastic band thingy that just digs into my head if I play long enough. The worst thing is that it's my main head strap. I bought an Elite strap 2 years ago, but after just 1 year it decided to form cracks and later just broke. Now I have this. The Elite strap was comfortable though, but I'm ranking this based off the stock Quest 2 head strap. Stock Quest 2 is not that comfortable at all. And that's something the Rift S did a lot better along with the battery life because it didn't have any batteries. The Rift S uses this Halo head strap design and it's pretty comfortable. Although you will need to buy a silicone cover for the faceplate because the faceplate of the Rift S and also the Quest 2 use this weird material for the faceplate. At first it seems comfortable, but after like 5 minutes my skin just gets irritated and my whole face turns red. To make things worse, this material soaks up a lot of sweat and it also gets really gross in a short time. Fortunately, the Quest 3 and most other VR headsets use other material for the faceplate. Speaking of the Quest 3, Meta unfortunately cheaped out on the head strap again for the Quest 3, and it's basically a slightly more comfortable head strap than the Quest 2. What is good about this headset's comfortability is that it doesn't weigh a lot. Headsets like the Valve Index weigh nearly 1 kilogram, but at least the weight in the Index is distributed pretty well over the headset. In the Quest 2's case, all the weight just sits on the front of the headset, which can lead to some neck issues. All this time I've been talking about the headset itself, but what about the controllers? These controllers are probably one of the best controllers of any VR headset. The Index has hand tracking, which is pretty cool, but the controllers are a bit fragile. And those controllers require base stations to function at all. The Quest 2 uses inside-out tracking. Basically, the headset just tracks where the controllers are with these cameras. Speaking of the cameras, I'm gonna talk a little about the pass-through. It's not not really good. It's just black and white pass-through with like 10 FPS, but I mean, it's better than nothing. That's something the Quest 3 did a lot better in my opinion. But this isn't a Quest 3 review. Back to the controllers, the Quest 2 uses the controller design they have been using since the original Rift. But the tracking rings are on the top of the controllers instead of the bottom. And the controllers are white instead of black. The Quest 2 controllers are a bit bigger than the Rift S, but it isn't much heavier. The Valve Index controllers are a lot more heavy in comparison. The Quest 3 controllers are a lot lighter than the Quest 2's, and they don't have a tracking ring, while they still don't require base stations. Good job on that, Meta. Good job. The tracking on the Quest 2 is really good. I've gotten almost no problems in 3 years of time with the tracking. Only when you go behind your back with the controllers, because there are no cameras on the back that can track the controllers at those positions. But even the tracking there is pretty decent. And this is coming from someone who has played Beat Saber and Gorilla Tag for a bit too long. And these games require good tracking, especially Beat Saber. If your tracking fucks up in Beat Saber, then you can say goodbye to that full combo. Speaking of Gorilla Tag, by the way, I've punched these controllers a lot of times because of that game. That's also why my controllers look like this. I've punched my desk, my mic, my walls, even my fucking roof.
Okay, I'm gonna catch you now. Oh god! I hit my roof. God damn it.
Your roof?
Yeah.
How did you hit your roof?
I don't know.
And these things still survived. The headset and the controllers are an absolute brick. They will probably survive a goddamn nuclear bomb and still work fine afterwards. If you want to see what these controllers and headset can handle, I would highly recommend this video by Thrillseeker, where he just basically stress tested the hell out of these headset and controllers. After 3 years of owning the headset, these are some issues that began to form. A few months back, this pixel just became blue forever. And that's also by the time my left controller began to have stick drift. So that's something that can develop over time. Also, a really weird bug I had was that my library was bugged for like a week, so I couldn't update anything, but they fixed it now. The OS is a bit slower than at launch, but it is still usable. But that's it for the issues. No game-changing issues that I had to replace my headset for. But would I still recommend buying a Quest 2 3 years later? I would say it depends. If you have the money to spend, I would personally recommend the Quest 3, because the Quest 3 will still get support in a few years to come. But I fear that the Quest 2 is gonna end up like the Quest 1 in around 1 to 2 years of time. If you don't know, most of the games just gave up support for the Quest 1, because it wasn't that powerful compared to the Quest 2. But if you don't have the money to spend on a Quest 3, or you just think the Quest 3 is a bit too expensive, I would still say just go for the Quest 2. It is a really good headset, and I've recommended this headset to a lot of people, even when the Quest 3 came out, and they have had no issues with this headset so far. But that would probably change in a few months. But waiting to buy VR is also a good option. Just wait to see what Valve is cooking up with the so-called Valve Deckard, because I'm sure that headset will be amazing. But that's it for today. If you want to share your stories with the Quest 2 or just bought VR recently, let me know in the comments. But for now, I would like to say bye bye.